As I tell a lot of the folks I work with, you'll never get to meet the people that you helped. And that might sound a little crazy, but they never got hurt. They were never injured. There was never an incident. You never get to meet them.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EHS program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report, podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smart strategies to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao. I'm the founder and CEO of Yellowbird. Today, we have joining us Steve Davis, the Vice President of EHS from Forbes Brothers Companies. Forbes Brothers, it's a group of companies with decades of experience in building and integrating safety into many, many different programs. Specifically, Steve has been in multiple industries. He is a practical organizational performance executive. He loves the concepts and beliefs and practical experience that he's had for reducing injuries, preventing risk, reducing risk, transforming a safety culture, and basically using quantitative and qualitative data to improve people's behaviors for the betterment of their careers, their work, and their lives. And so with that, I want to thank Steve. First, thank you, Steve, for joining me from Tennessee. I also want to finish this introduction by saying that I know that you have worked in industries that I'm excited to dig into a little bit, including utilities, nuclear, wind energy, construction sectors. You're a pretty sought after speaker. I've seen you speak. You're exceptional at doing that. And of course, all the accolades from National Safety Council and being part of the Campbell Institute and INPO, and the list goes on and on. So thank you for being here with me.
Michael, it's my pleasure. And yeah, through all that, you just got to have a good story and everything else and everything else works.
Well, you do have a great story. And, part of the reason why you're on here today is, as I mentioned to you on the line, what Yellowbird does is one thing, but what I care the most about is human impact and human stories. And if you talk to anybody, yourself included, we've already had our discussions, the ability to feel every single day that you're doing good by another human being and you are actually doing the work and teaching people how to own and do their own work to get themselves home safely every day, that it's a community endeavor. And it's something that I think you have to be a special person to dedicate your life to it. And I would just love having these conversations. So first question I have for you is, how did you end up where you are in your journey, and why do people want to hear about your story? Why do they want to listen to you? Brag a little bit. Tell us about your story and your experience and your journey.
I guess it's become a calling, right? As you say, making sure that people go home, no worse than they showed up at work, maybe it's a little more tired, but, it certainly has become a calling. I'm not so sure it started out that way. We sometimes get thrown through doors and you adapt to what you find on the other side. A little like myself, I've had a broad range of experiences. I wasn't always in safety. I started out as a hot air balloon pilot, a raft guide, a stuntman, firefighter, a paramedic. Most of all, I learned a lot as a bartender in my younger years, and built on all those experiences until one day I was thrown through the door of grad school in safety management at the University of Tennessee. And out of that, I couldn't get away from a career in safety. And so, I really embraced it, and I have come to really appreciate and love the results. And as I tell a lot of the folks I work with, you'll never get to meet the people that you helped. And that
Yes.
that that might sound a little crazy, but they never got
No.
hurt. They were never injured. There was never an incident. You never get to meet
Yes.
them. So, as safety professionals, sometimes we have to take solace in a graph.
It's true, and that's the quickest way for somebody to go, "Oh, well, there's been no incidents, and therefore we're gonna cut your budget." It's like, "No, there's been no incidents, and that's why you need to keep my budget or increase it because that is a good thing." That's why.
Exactly. The case isn't hard to make once you've proven that things work and your ideas work. But I guess I can say that in recent time here where I am today and what I work on and what I appreciate is I'll tell you a little bit of a story. Um, I was implementing some human performance principles, which is there's several schools of thought on that nowadays, but back then it was the DOE model, and we were kind of stealing some things out of that, combining it with new thinking. Think fast, think slow. I'm sure everybody's heard of fast brain, slow brain. We started on that journey
Yep.
back in 2015 or so. But in implementing that in the wind business, one of the OEMs who we were working as subcontractors for and doing maintenance, said, "Hey, how come your guys never get hurt? What is it that your company's doing? And we'd love to hear about it." And I said, "Well, we're doing this human performance thing." And they said, "Well, fly out and tell us about it, would you?" And being business partners, I said, "Well, certainly." And so, Michael, I got to tell you, on the plane ride out, I didn't know what I was gonna tell him. Exactly. I'm like, "What are we doing different that's actually working?" And I had to sit and I had time. It was flying all the way out to the West Coast, and so I had time to sit and doodle and try to figure out what is it that I'm doing that's so different that is creating such positive results and outcomes. And so I doodled on it a bunch, and what I came up with was, there are 5 aspects to a safety program that if you align to these 5 elements, if you will, and you connect them, and the more connection points that you have between them, this better and stronger your safety program will be. And what I found, it was programs, processes, metrics, communications, and then finally the necessary organization to support it all. And that's where the magic was happening.
Yes.
It wasn't that I had the best flavor of the day, safety program, sticker, slogan, campaign, whatever you want to call it. Certainly that matters, right? Your programs have to be focused at your problems. But what we were doing was an excellent job of tying it back. Our programs were connected to our processes. Our processes were measurable. We embedded in the metrics, and they also supported our communications. That's where we got communications from, and they were linked back to your programs. And then finally, you have to have an org, set up to support all that. But what that was doing was really generating a lot of very positive outcomes and a lot of employee engagement when we did it that way. Because now all of a sudden, the things you're doing are very visible. And let me give you an example of what that doesn't look like, I guess is the best way to put it, to tell you what it does look like. And so I got out to where I was headed and sat with my peers, and all of us safety nerds were sitting together in a room, and there's like, "Well, tell us, Steve, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, let me ask you all a question." I said, why don't you give me an example of a program you guys are doing?" And one of them said, "Oh, confined space." And I said, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "It's more of a process, really. This is a process of confined space. Yeah, programmatically, we call it a program, I suppose, but that's not what I'm talking about, guys. Give me touchy feely. What do you got?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We will stop work." And I said, "Oh, okay, always a good thing, but tell me more." I'm like, "Where'd you get it?" And they're like, Dave went to a conference, and one of our competitors had this stop work program, and they were getting great results with it. And so Dave came back, told us all about it. We thought we'll do it. And I'm like, "Okay, but that's all right." It's, most programs I think should be data driven and based on your analysis of what's causing your pain points. But I said, "Okay, not a bad thing, but let's go to process space, folks. Where is that? Is that embedded in your observation program?" Is it embedded in your investigations? Is it a question you might ask? Do you do analysis based on was work stopped or not? Could that have prevented it? And of course, all the answers were no. No, we're not sure about all that. Okay, go to communications. Are you celebrating the good catches? Are you telling people what good looks like when you stop work? And are you telling the stories of, geez, when we didn't stop work, this thing happened, And I said, well, we got these posters. I said, those,
We've
those
got these
are nice.
posters.
Those are
That's
nice.
always good.
Yeah. And I said, well, tell me about communicate. We went down the list. So
Yeah.
short of it, I said, hey, how many people stopped work last week versus this week? And they said, we don't know. I'm like, well, do you guys think your program's working? All right. So anyway.
Well, and the goal is not necessarily to have a whole bunch of people stopping work. Like, if you're measuring, if that's your goal, is your goal to stop work, that means that you've got a lot of people doing very dangerous things. I'm glad they're willing to do it, but probably need to address something a little bit more underlying.
Exactly. So yeah, it was a learning opportunity for me to go, okay, as I move forward in my career, how do I make sure that whenever I'm doing change management or designing a program, that program is then married to process communications and metrics, and I've got the resources to do what I need to do there. So
It's so interesting, Steve. So, this conversation comes full circle. I don't know if you remember from our discussion, I was saying that Yellowbird's biggest challenge as a company is finding a way to get alignment with our client and their team on what success looks like. And you would not think that that should be difficult. And, and it happens a lot, particularly in the insurance assessment space or risk loss control, loss surveys. Also happens on things such as doing a hazardous materials assessment or having a program review, which is what you're referring to, like overarching program review, where you're talking about not just the confined space or whatever training, not just the program, bullet points, but also the communication flow, what are we measuring? What is the OKR or KPI that we are thinking is the most important, the most important number, all the things, right? And so like we'll do something for an organization and they won't have a Steve. And that group will say, okay, well, I want you to assess our how we're doing, and I want you to do a survey at our 40 locations across the country. And if you have pros that can do it, I'm like, absolutely. I said, tell me what your goals are at each of at the locations. And you get this silence. You're like, okay, well, what is the inspection or the report? What does a report at the end need to look like? Just let's start there. Let's start with the end in mind, right? As we do. What's the end in mind? What do you want it to look like? And there's a blank stare. And they're like, don't you have a report? What? Well, yeah. And we do. We have a report. And they're like, well, we don't want to give you ours. We want to use yours. Okay. I'll send you ours, but I want you to review it and tell me if it applies to you. Because as we know, Steve, what applies to one company in the same industry, and I use this example a lot, a big box retail. Well, Costco, who does, I shouldn't be calling them out by name, but it's not being derogatory. Some of them have tire shops inside their facilities. Some of them have delis and ovens where they bake their chicken, and some of them have all these, and others don't. And so even in those, they have different requirements at each of those locations. Well, big box, the next guy over, maybe a Target, same large format scale. Their needs are very different than Costco's needs. They're not buzzing around with pallets and forklifts and crane operations and all the other stuff that might be happening there. And it's just so interesting. It's like, oh, big box retail, we you know what to do. Like, nope, don't know what to do. So tell me about what you do now in your business so that we keep going on a path, because you're still in the energy world, correct?
correct. Just in I started out many years in nuclear power, and yeah, I always knew where the energy came from, but I never really knew where it went. And so, again, another door opened up. I get thrown through it. Now I'm in transmission distribution. Been in this business for about 4 years now. Uh, but yeah, I think, Michael, what you were referring to there is, the holy grail everybody wants to know is my culture good? Is my safety culture what it should be to prevent accidents and injuries? And I think I say that's always the holy grail of safety, because everybody, wants to know, well, what is the leading indicator that's going to tell me that? you know and where
Yes.
do I turn, and how do I check and adjust as a leader, to
Right.
I have if you're the CEO of a big box company, you want to know that your safety is the same at all of the different locations. So how, as a leader, do you know that? And it's I like to say it comes down to a leading indicator. That leading indicator is undoubtedly culture. And so how do you measure culture? Well, I think you need to look at
Yes.
the definition of that and say,
Hmm.
well, it's quite simply, culture is your repeatable pattern of behaviors. And
Repeatable pattern of behaviors.
and so,
Okay.
yeah, that defines your culture in
It
my
does.
humble
You're right.
opinion. But here's the kicker. I believe the behaviors, that those repeatable patterns that you want to define your culture, at the end of the day, are voluntary. And so here's where the fun part comes in. If
Right.
if if you are a safety leader in an organization, and you can get creative enough to figure out what those voluntary repeatable patterns are in your organization, and then you can start to measure them, you will start to uh, almost get to the holy grail, right? and
Huh.
and
So
of
give
what it's
me an
called.
example. Give me an example of a repeatable pattern within an organization of scale that you would be able to measure a good safety culture.
Sure. I'll pick an easy low hanging fruit here. So, let's just say documenting a good catch, right? The most at risk environments I've ever seen in industry, regardless of the industry, are the environments that don't have data, good, bad, or otherwise. um
Sure.
just it's just radio silence, right? And those are the places you'll get the random Tuesday phone call from, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'll be right there. And it becomes very unpredictable without data. And so, anyway, so I always like to have data, and good, bad,
Yeah,
or
me too.
otherwise.
Me too.
And so and
I'm a data
so
nerd. I'm a data nerd too. I love
yeah,
it.
so you want that data. Um,
Right.
all right, but because I think it's highly correlated to performance. And so you also have learning opportunities. As I say, it connects. When you have data, you can start to connect program, process, metrics, communications, right? And so you get your data. But to me, I would start to trend it as engagement. How many good catches are you getting out of an organization? Because you can't mandate, right? It's voluntary. You can't go in and say, hey, I expect you guys to deliver 10 good catches each. Well, then now you're just getting compliance, right? It's not. The culture becomes when you're now getting 10 good catches, from each supervisor a month, just willingly. And and then that becomes the thing that you start to measure as your leading indicator.
I think this is fascinating. By the way, this example is such an interesting example. One I have not heard from anybody before. And I've had a few of these. And I think it's fantastic because I talk about the importance of, or frankly, the irritation I have from the days since number. Days since the last incident. And whoever on earth wants to be the person that ruins that streak. That streak is something that the general manager of that plant has great pride in. And trust me, when you're the person who has some kind of a pinch point or laceration or worse, and you ruin and you have to report it, and all of a sudden the 827 days goes to zero, you are not popular. But tying, and by the way, I don't mind that number. It was great. If you tie in on a daily basis the good catch and say, we have this because we have this. We have 800 days of no incident because on average, we have 12 good catches a week of things that could have been bad that, Joe was walking by and he saw an electrical cord that was right next to running through a faucet, and he stopped what he was doing and he removed it and did a proper protocol around keeping the electricity away from water, and it was a good catch. Congratulations, Joe. At least there's 800 days of non-incident because Joe stopped somebody from getting electrocuted. Right?
It's not just radio silence, right?
We don't know why. Is it just because everybody's too busy to report that they got hurt?
Right, right. No,
So,
exactly.
what do you do so in your current role, you're working with utilities, and we do work. We're actually working on a program. It's pretty exciting, actually. I'm not going to tell you which utility it is because they haven't given me permission, but we're doing a quarterly training program at every one of their locations, and it's monthly. So they pay, I don't know, I think it was like $1,000 a month or something. It wasn't very expensive. And every quarter at every location that's paying for this fee has a specific risk associated training, but they don't know what training they're going to need. But they've just got an ongoing training program, and they know on this date of each month at each facility, we have to decide what is important for us to improve on our training protocols. And I love it. I'm going to try and roll it out nationwide to everybody because I think it's just the greatest thing. Because the biggest, and you can tell me if I'm on or off in the utility world, but there's no single risk. There's lots of different iterative risks based upon what you do and who you do it with, and what you're, if you're a forklift driver and you're on a machine every single day, and there's high turnover in those roles, well, that's a different training than if you are arc flash or if you are whatever else need that you have, confined space. But no matter what, every 90 days I got a training. And so it's like, that we had a couple of near misses, or we had a couple of, good catches, enough good catches that whatever was caught 4 times this year, we're doing some better training on that. So we don't have to have a good catch. So what do you guys, what's a hot button in your world right now? What are you dealing with?
Sure. I mean, it's yeah, we have different focuses from time to time, obviously it's trend based. And so we look at what's going on. I call it reading the tea leaves. And you got to go deep. I like to say any fool can read the data, can read a graph and go, oh, look, But I think you actually learn when you go beyond just what's okay. That's your hot spot, is this bar graph. You're getting events in this bucket. Well, now you go in and you read and you understand why those events are happening, and that's what you get excited about. Is why are these events happening? I can tell you here at my company Forbes, we are focused right now. We have been for quite some time on high energy hazards and differentiating those categories.
Define a high energy hazard for
Sure,
those
sure.
who
Yeah,
aren't
yeah,
familiar.
yeah. It's not my idea. It's Dr. Hollowell's crew and University
Yep.
of Colorado and Edison Electric Institute and all of those really smart people
Yep.
who've already thought of it. We're just building upon it and utilizing it, the energy wheel type thing, right? Where we're going through and we're saying, you know what, the behaviors and the risks associated with high energy hazard are different than the I smashed my thumb with a hammer hazard.
Sure.
And so we are going through and saying, okay, well, surely we want to prevent all injuries, but we really are focused on high energy hazards at the moment. And and what we do is we create events. We treat them different when they happen. So say, for example, you have a powered mobile equipment event and nobody got hurt. Well, we count that as a potential serious injury. Um,
Right.
and just because the behaviors associated with it was a near miss, and we address it different. And we have different learnings, different levels of review that we put into that, to the energy of understanding what went wrong. But eventually, you get enough data, even in those categories. Things that fit into that are safety at heights, arc flash, electrical contact. There's a competitor of ours that uses the word sticky, things that can kill you, and that's the best way I could sum it up. And so yeah, so we get pretty excited about those. So we're focused on how do we prevent those, and we're actually tracking our performance relative to that to understand, are we getting better or worse at these, and are we being effective with the controls that we're putting in place. And we learn about those controls as we go through and do analysis, right? So you got to go read the investigation. You really have to get into the human performance part of it, of
Right.
what are your error precursors that you're seeing, and then we start to address some of those. For example, we've learned, in this process, a lot of these events could be prevented by what's simply called as a take two. In the parlance of Department of Energy human performance nerdery, a take two is a human performance tool. Real simple. And it's designed to drive awareness. You can't fit everything in the mind's eye and your tailboard. So we stop before we go hands on with the work, and we take 2 minutes and ask four simple questions. And does everybody know their job? Is this what we expected? These kinds of things. And then we go to work. And we found by doing that, even with our high energy hazards, that has created a lot of good catches that wouldn't
Yes.
have otherwise existed, and i.e. then prevented events. And so we're trying to
Yes.
get further upstream, in the work planning, hazard recognition process, to get better at, you know, stopping people from getting bad hurt. So
It's funny you should say that. So I've been spending a fair amount of my time lately. I do primarily three things. Number one thing I do, unfortunately, good, bad, or indifferent, is deal with investors and boards, because that's what CEOs of startup tech companies do. Now, we're 6 years old, so we're not really a startup anymore, but we are, growing so fast that you always need to get money. And so that's a big part of my life. The second part of my life is working with the team to find out what the friction points are and things that are, um, I always say, what got you here won't always get you there. And that's part of that whole take two kind of a discussion, which is, when you're doing 50 or 100 trainings or surveys a month, you can manually do some of that stuff. I mean, it's better than most people could do, but you could still throw some bodies at it. Add another zero to that. There's not enough bodies you can throw at it to make. So, are we doing the things that will help us scale? And the third thing that I do more than anything else is sales training. And it's funny that because I've been in sales most of my career, and or we're all in some form of sales. And I said just yesterday, which is what's bringing this up, and I just find it to be so interesting. I think that philosophy, the guy Kawasaki has that 10-20-30 deck. I don't know if you know what it is, but 10-20-30 deck is basically, it's, let's see if I can do it. It is 10 minutes, 20 slides, and 30-point font, which, by the way, for technical people like you, it would be very hard to do. 30-point font on a presentation means that you have to get really tight on what you want to say and what the number one thing is, right? And it's hard for me too. It's hard for everybody. But the old thesis of I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. That's the presentation 101. We all know it. We learned it in school. That's good communication. Whether you're putting a training together for safety, or whether you're running accounting, or whether you're building a software, which we're building, getting to the nitty gritty of the most important thing, which is kind of what you were just talking about, and having people understand it across large groups. hard as anything, but I also realized that my sales training as just growing up doing it is just sales. Like, it's like, why do I care? What does it mean to me? And where's the value? And it's like, okay, if and at the end of the day, if you don't I don't care, you're not gonna make that sale, period. Like, gotta get somebody to care. And that's kind of an easy thing for us in safety.
Yeah, I think Michael, one of my favorite BD guys I used to work with said, "Steve, nothing happens till somebody sells something." And and that is so true, and it's so true in safety, and it's so important, like you say, Michael. It's and certainly in the work that you do, critical, right? You don't sell it, you don't get paid. I know, but it's critical in safety as well because it's. I like to say in safety we have all of the responsibility and none of
Uh-huh.
the authority.
Exactly. It's
And
so
so
true.
but you know
And
what? You know what I found sells best is a
but
story.
exactly.
You
It's
have
so
to
true.
tell a story, and nobody really cares about your little graphs.
No,
Nobody really cares
no,
about your all the hard work you did on analysis and the bullet hole that you circled from all of your hard work on your common cause. Nobody cares.
nope.
What they care about is what's the story behind it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I always like to say, what are they going to remember? Right? Like we write safety alerts, and I have a formula that we use for them, and there's always the lesson learned at the bottom. And I tell my safety team, I'm like, hey, you know what? If what I need you to write something in that space that somebody's going to remember, you think they're going to remember in 15 minutes after they walk out of the Monday morning meeting.
Yes. And you make it stick. Exactly.
I don't need a sentence or a paragraph. I need sound bites, right? What is going to stick?
Well, it's funny you should say that because one of the things that we're spending a lot of time on, and folks don't think it's important when you first tell them, because our industry we're kind of a bunch of eggheads. We've read the regs, we've understood the laws, we understand the compliance. And this came out of a conversation with my sister yesterday, actually. My sister works for a software company. She is severely anxious about speaking in front of people. And because she's a technical person. And so she's just not naturally. When I was growing up, and she's 4 years older than me, Mike, will you order me? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, why can't you say it? I don't like to talk to people. She just naturally doesn't like that. And I get it. And you know what she's doing now and she doesn't enjoy it at all. But I shouldn't say that. Maybe her boss is listening. She's doing well, and she's getting a lot of accolades for it, but it's hard for her. It's giving her anxiety because she's teaching a class to engineers on how to do succinct board presentations, taking complex ideas and making them interesting. And it's funny because I said, Melissa, she goes, and the worst part is that I feel all the anxiety they do about getting in front of a group and their final test, because she does it for a very large company and she's trying to get all of her people ready to elevate their level in the company. And so they have to learn how to present to their leadership and management. And people with communication anxiety, it's
Mm.
not easy. And I said, what you're doing, Melissa, is actually what I'm doing on the platform. And she goes, well, what do you mean? I said, it's not about whether you know the reg and even whether or not you can explain why. It's, can you communicate in a language can you communicate to the customer that doesn't know the professional going out there, that that professional is going to do a great job. And it's not because of their certification, it's because you've vetted them for the ability to speak and present and have charisma. And it's like, sometimes that's not important. Sometimes you want somebody, hey, I need you to write a policy for me. But we do that all the time. And you could get somebody who's stuck in a basement to do that, who's really smart. But if you're going to start training 40 people at a time for the next 6 months, you better have some charisma or you are not going to keep this job. So yeah, you're right. A story is everything. So tell me about so let's get off the business for a second. So tell me about you. You're going up to Canada, you're Canadian by birth, right?
No, I grew up in Ohio, left when I was legally able. My undergrad's at University of Wyoming, and yeah, and so I've been in the States. Yeah, goodness, I've been. Forbes is a Canadian-based company, but we work all over North America.
Okay.
So yeah, so I go up to Canada quite a bit. We have a lot of major projects and also lots of recurring revenue work all across the provinces as well as here in the States. So yeah.
That is something you and I are going to have to talk about on another time, but we're actually looking at doing some testing. We're going to be opening up Canada soon, as Yellowbird, and the provinces. We're going to probably do it in BC to start, and mostly because of it gives you a large enough population base to really see how we do, and most of the laws and the regulations and things, which are very different than the United States, at least are the same in that province. Because you go province to province, you can even go area to area, and they're very different. And so you need to really understand it well to do what we do, to make sure somebody is going to be exceptional at guiding the client to do their work, right? So you always go up to Canada, so I assume that you were actually going home, that you were going to visit parents or family or something like that. So I apologize, I am mistaken. But if you were Canadian, I think you would have loved it because of your background in whitewater rafting and climbing. Because there's no better in the world than I hear than some of these outdoors adventures in Canada. It sounds like it's
Y- Yeah, BC's beautiful. It's
yes,
beautiful. Yeah.
yes, it really
Yeah.
is. So tell me, so family, life, all that kind of stuff. Can you give me a little bit of rundown on who you are as an individual?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version here and explain that everybody's like, well, wait a minute, you used to be a stuntman?
I know you were a stuntman. That's actually, and a hot air balloonist. I mean, these are big deals. So yeah, you don't hear that every day.
No, give you the Reader's Digest version. So, I grew up in Ohio, went to school in Wyoming for my undergrad, studied geology, finished up that. You know what you do with a degree in geology? You go to grad school,
You go to
right? So,
grad school.
I did not want to go to grad school. And
Yep.
so I headed up to Montana and I started a hot air balloon business up by Glacier Park and was flying balloons up there. And my father taught me to fly in high school, and that was my summer jobs.
Fly hot air balloons
Yeah,
or
yes,
planes?
yeah, just hot air balloons.
Balloons. Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I was there for about 3 years, skiing and kayaking, mountain biking, raft guiding, flying balloons. Got away
Yeah.
with murder. One day I was hiking down a trail, and a lady was coming up the trail. And she said, "Is that your truck down there with all the graphics balloon stuff on us?" Well, sure. She goes, "Well, hey, my sister owns a travel adventure business in Costa Rica, and she's looking for hot air balloon pilots and raft guides." I thought, well,
Well, okay.
sent my resume in. Yeah, I got hired immediately. Went to Costa Rica, did a bunch of the same down there. Came back, went to work for the same lady. She's actually one of my heroes in life, and I went to work for her back in Michigan at a balloon manufacturing company where I was the sales guy. So I was selling hot air balloons, and so did that for several years. Partner in crime, a guy about my same age. He became one of my best friends, and Mike Howard. He's now a captain with Emirates Airlines, and so yeah. But he continued his flying career. But together we got bored one day, and we thought, what would happen? Why don't we get our skydiving licenses so we can one can fly, one would jump. So every day after work, we go out back and inflate a balloon, and one would fly, one would jump, and we got bored with that eventually. And we said, what would happen if we tied two balloons together? Could we fly? Sure enough, you could. And then we said, well, what would happen if we put a balance beam in between it? Could we walk the balance beam? That's, turns out you could. And then we said, what would happen if we filmed this nonsense and sent it off to TV companies? Well, they buy it, is what happens, right? And they're like, "Holy cow!" And so we got on Guinness Book of World Records doing that. Eventually, Ripley's couldn't be outdone, so they, said, "We'll pay you to do it higher or whatever." And then we started some work. We did it with MTV, and it was kind of the same thing over and over. But then Ripley's called us one day and said, "Hey, we want you guys to do that lawn chair Larry guy thing, that guy that flew through LAX with weather balloons and nearly suffocated from hypoxia and froze to death and everything. But they said, could you guys do that? And we said, well, we'll give us a minute. And so we did math. We got together and we did some math, and we thought, sure, but we can't do it with weather balloons. We got to use, this slightly, they wanted, or sorry, they wanted it with party balloons. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then, we
Yeah.
said,
Party balloons. Oh boy. Yep.
yeah, yeah. And we said, no, you can't tie that many together that fast to build
Sure.
something. So we ended up coming to a size balloon. They just wanted the drama of a
Sure.
BB gun, and guys shooting balloons out with a BB gun. And so
Of course.
we went to 18,000 feet, tied to about 500 helium balloons, and shot our way down.
Oh my gosh.
And so bunch of crazy stuff like that. But then I met my wife in East Tennessee on a
Okay.
sales trip. I was still working for the balloon manufacturing company, and I sold her dad a hot air balloon, and I got her in the trade somehow. So
Okay.
quit my job, moved down here to East Tennessee, and since then I went back to grad school and did all those other fun things. But we've had two young boys. One of them is a lineman with our company here at Forbes, and the
Wonderful.
other is following kind of in my footsteps. He's at the University of Wyoming, and
Awesome.
he's a sophomore there. And so,
Awesome.
so
My
we're
son's a junior in college. I do know. So your son's about 19, 20 years old.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So I got one off the payroll, one still on the payroll.
Yeah.
And but the wife and I are empty nesters now, and so yeah, we've bought a little cabin in Colorado this last year.
Awesome.
So in the mountains, so I can go do all the things I used to love to do in the mountains. And yeah,
Good for you.
We still have a base here in East Tennessee, which is really where home is for her business and everything. So
First of all, you wouldn't expect somebody with your background and somebody who did so many tactical but methodical, and that's what people go, oh, safety people, they're very square. It's like, no, they're very calculated. We'll take risk. You just need to make sure that you've calculated every bit of the risk and you've designed out as much of it as you can.
you do the JHA, right? I was in grad school, Michael, and I got a phone call from one of these producers we used to work with, and he basically said, "Hey, Steve, I need you to do a job with Richard Branson in 3 weeks in Africa. You in?" And I was like, "Man, I got a job now and a family. I just can't go do that. I'm in school." And he's like, "A lot of money involved in this. You sure?" And I said, "Look, man, I said I can't do 3 weeks in Africa. Okay, this is something that's going to require a lot of planning." And it was actually with Richard Branson we were doing the stunt with, and it was a Fox TV program and all this, and it was a big to do. I said, "Well, tell you what, I need at least 3 months, and I can do it in Europe or in the U.S., and I have enough help there." And I said, "If you guys can work on that, call me back." They called me back 20 minutes later and said, "You're on." And I went, "Oh crap."
Ah,
Now I got to
but
figure this out. Yeah.
yeah,
And so I had to go to my professor. I was a graduate teaching assistant in the safety
right.
nerdery at the University of Tennessee.
Yep.
And so I had responsibilities. I was a fireman, a paramedic. I had my shifts. I had other stuff going on. And I
Yep.
needed about 3 weeks to pull this off, to go
Right.
train and practice and figure out the
Uh-huh.
logistics. And so my professor, I had to go to him and I said, "Hey, can I be off for 3 weeks?" And he said, "For what?" And I explained to him what I was doing. And he just looked at me and he said, "Son, why are you in my school?"
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the question. That's the right question.
Who more so should be in your program here, right?
So it's true though, and it's funny you should say that, Steve, because your son is a lineman right now, and by the way, I just had another discussion with somebody whose son's going into the very, very important and critically impactful trades. Being a lineman is probably one of the most important trades that you can do. Also, something that you want to take safety seriously, have one of your children doing it. And but it also means that the people who have actually felt the adrenaline rush who had the brink of, oh my God, that could have been really bad, which we have all experienced at some point in our lives. Those are the people you want to be running your safety program, because they understand, okay, I got away lucky. Let's put some things in place so that other people don't have to get lucky, right? And the guy I was talking to earlier actually he got in, he's an older gentleman, not that much older than us. We're approximately the same age, I can tell, and our kids and so forth. He said, yeah, when I got in the industry, I was actually working in the building trades, and I was walking on I-beams, and I had no fall protection. Fall protection wasn't a thing. And he goes, and I was 30 feet in the air or 30 stories in the air, and I'm just walking along, and that's just the way it was. And I'm like, whew. I'm like, how many times did a big gust of wind really scare the heck out of you? It goes, more often than I can admit. Like,
Yeah.
you wish you had fall protection, didn't you? He goes, oh, do I ever?
Yeah. But now it's funny. You go talk to that same guy and you tell him to put his gloves on, and he just looks at you like, what?
Exactly.
Yeah. My gloves? Really? Is that what you're worried about? Yeah.
I hear you. Well, my friend, this was fantastic. I thank you so much for this. I've enjoyed it immensely. I think we're going to have a lot of followers.
I was gonna say, shameless plug, for Yellowbird. Certainly, Michael, we've had opportunity to look at sourcing, and yeah, very easy process to work with Yellowbird. So you guys are doing great work there. Currently looking at how do we expand, the safety, or excuse me, the training elements of it for safety training. And so, I'm looking into how do we partner more on that. And, we're currently going through revamping a lot of our, well, not revamping, restructuring is probably a better word, our training group at the moment. And so, yeah, I look forward to connecting more on that.
Well, I'm always here. Our account management team and our sales and BD guys are the best in the business, but just know I'm always here to make sure you're happy. And if you find during this journey that there's something we can do better, I want to hear it, because at the end of the day, in safety and in life, constant improvement is important. And I do not claim that we've done everything perfectly all the time. And maybe there's a way of every single step just being a little bit better. So thank you for saying that, Steve. I didn't expect that, and I'm honored by that. So thank you, and have a wonderful week, and we'll see you later.
Yep. Thank you, Michael. Take care, everyone.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.